The fluorescent lights of St. Michael's Hospital waiting room hummed their monotonous tune as Marcus Thompson shifted uncomfortably in the worn plastic chair. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, and the October rain hadn't stopped since morning. Through the large windows, downtown Chicago looked like a watercolor painting left out in the storm, all grays and blues bleeding into each other. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. He'd been here since 6 that morning, ever since his son, Jake's breathing had become so labored that the emergency inhaler stopped working. Asthma attack, the 3rd one this month. At 8 years old, Jake had been through more hospital visits than most adults, and each time, Marcus felt the same crushing weight of helplessness mixed with the very real weight of medical bills he couldn't afford. His stomach growled. He looked down at the paper bag in his hands, a turkey sandwich from the hospital cafeteria. $5 he'd counted out in quarters and dimes from the change jar in his truck. It was supposed to last him until dinner, maybe longer if he was careful. The construction site where he worked had been shut down for the week due to the rain, which meant no work, no pay. "Excuse me, mister?" The small voice made him look up. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, stood before him. She wore a pink raincoat that was too big for her, the sleeves hanging past her hands. Her dark curls were damp, and mascara-streaked teardrops had left trails down her brown cheeks. Her eyes were red and puffy. "Hey there," Marcus said gently, glancing around for a parent or guardian. The waiting room was scattered with people, but no one seemed to be looking for a lost child. "Are you okay? Where's your mom or dad?" The girl's lower lip trembled. "My daddy's in there," she pointed toward the emergency department doors. "With my mommy. She fell down the stairs at home and she won't wake up." Fresh tears spilled down her face. Marcus's heart clenched. He knew that fear, that specific terror of watching someone you love being taken away on a stretcher. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm sure the doctors are taking good care of her." The girl nodded, wiping her nose with her oversized sleeve. She swayed slightly on her feet. "When's the last time you ate something?" Marcus asked. She thought for a moment. "Breakfast. Daddy made pancakes, but I only ate one because I wanted to save room for lunch at school. But then Mommy fell and we came here and Daddy forgot his wallet at home and—" She stopped, her voice breaking. "I'm hungry." Those 2 words hung in the air between them. Marcus looked at the sandwich in his hands, then at the little girl, then back at the sandwich. His own stomach protested the decision his heart had already made. "Well, we can't have that, can we?" He unwrapped the sandwich and held it out to her. "Here you go." The girl's eyes widened. "But that's yours." "I had a big breakfast," Marcus lied smoothly. "Way too full. You'd actually be doing me a favor." She hesitated for just a moment before hunger won out. She took the sandwich with both hands and sat down in the chair next to him, taking small, grateful bites. Marcus watched her eat, something warm spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with food. "I'm Sophie," she said between bites. "Sophie Chen." "Nice to meet you, Sophie. I'm Marcus. My son Jake's here too. Asthma trouble. Is he going to be okay?" "Yeah, he will be. The doctors here are really good." He hoped it was true. He hoped it was true for both their families. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes while Sophie finished the sandwich. The rain continued its assault on the windows, and people came and went through the automatic doors, bringing with them the smell of wet pavement and car exhaust. "Mr. Marcus?" Sophie's voice was quieter now, more tentative. "Do you think my mommy will be okay?" Marcus thought about giving her false hope, about saying what she wanted to hear. But he also thought about Jake and how he'd always tried to be honest with his son, even when the truth was hard. "I think your mommy has you thinking about her, and your daddy in there fighting for her, and that's powerful stuff," he said. "And I think that whatever happens, you're going to be okay, because you're brave enough to talk to strangers in hospital waiting rooms." Sophie managed a small smile. "You're not a stranger anymore. You're my friend who shared his lunch." Before Marcus could respond, a tall Asian man in a business suit burst through the emergency department doors, his tie askew, phone pressed to his ear. His eyes scanned the waiting room frantically. "Daddy!" Sophie jumped up and ran to him. The man's face transformed with relief as he scooped her up. "Sophie, I've been looking everywhere for you. You can't just wander off like that." He held her tight, and Marcus could see his hands shaking. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I was hungry, and Marcus gave me his sandwich." The man's eyes found Marcus, who had stood up awkwardly, unsure what to do with his hands. "Thank you," the man said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much. I'm Dr. James Chen. I'm sorry, everything's been so chaotic. My wife, she's in surgery right now, and I realized Sophie was gone, and it's okay." Marcus interrupted gently. "She's a brave kid. I hope your wife pulls through, Dr. Chen. Thank you. I should get Sophie to my office where she'll be safe. Thank you again, Mr. Thompson, Marcus Thompson." Dr. Chen nodded, committing the name to memory, then carried Sophie toward the elevator. She waved at Marcus over her father's shoulder, and he waved back. As they disappeared into the elevator, a nurse called out, "Mr. Thompson, you can see Jake now. He's stable and asking for you." Marcus exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. As he followed the nurse through the sterile corridors, his empty stomach rumbled again, but somehow he felt fuller than he had in months. 3 weeks passed before Marcus found himself back in St. Michael's Hospital. November had brought an early cold snap to Chicago, and Jake's asthma had responded poorly to the sudden temperature drop. This time, it was worse than before. Jake's oxygen levels had dropped dangerously low, and the pediatrician in the ER had looked concerned in that specific way that made Marcus's blood run cold. "We need to keep him overnight for observation," Dr. Patricia Morrison had said, her hand resting briefly on Marcus's shoulder. "His airways are more inflamed than I'd like. We're giving him steroids and monitoring his breathing." Now, at 11 p.m., Marcus sat in a chair beside Jake's hospital bed on the pediatric floor, watching the gentle rise and fall of his son's chest. The oxygen cannula in Jake's nose hissed softly, and monitors beeped their reassuring rhythm. Jake was finally sleeping, his small hand curled around Marcus's calloused fingers. Marcus's phone buzzed. Another text from his supervisor at the construction company. They needed him on site tomorrow morning. A big commercial job that couldn't wait. Missing it might mean losing his position, but looking at Jake's pale face, there was no decision to make. His son came first. Always. He was so lost in thought that he didn't hear the door open. "Mr. Thompson?" Marcus looked up to find Dr. Chen standing in the doorway, wearing surgical scrubs and a white coat. It took Marcus a moment to place him. The man looked more composed than their last encounter, but there were still shadows under his eyes. "Dr. Chen?" Marcus said, surprise evident in his voice. I didn't know you worked here." "I'm one of the thoracic surgeons," Dr. Chen said, stepping into the room. His voice was professional but warm. "I was reviewing cases for tomorrow when I saw Jake's name on the pediatric admission list. I wanted to check if it was the same Thompson from the waiting room." "Small world," Marcus said. "How's your wife doing?" Something shifted in Dr. Chen's expression, relief mixed with residual worry. "She's recovering. It was a severe subdural hematoma, touch and go for a while, but she's home now doing physical therapy. Sophie asks about you sometimes, actually. The nice man who gave me his lunch." Marcus felt his cheeks warm. "I'm glad she's okay. Your wife, I mean. That's great news." Dr. Chen pulled up a chair, sitting down with the ease of someone who'd spent countless hours in hospital rooms. "I've been meaning to find you, to thank you properly. That day it was the worst day of my life. My wife unconscious, Sophie scared and hungry, me completely falling apart." He paused. "Small acts of kindness like yours, they matter more than you know. Anyone would have done the same." "You'd be surprised," Dr. Chen said quietly. "I've been a doctor for 15 years. I've seen the best and worst of people in crisis situations. What you did wasn't nothing." An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Marcus shifted in his chair, his focus returning to Jake. They're keeping him overnight. His asthma's been getting worse. I don't know if it's the weather or the stress or—" He trailed off, not wanting to voice his fears. Dr. Chen leaned forward, his eyes on Jake's chart at the foot of the bed. "May I?" At Marcus's nod, he picked it up, his trained eyes scanning the information. His expression grew thoughtful. "Has Jake seen a pulmonary specialist recently?" "We saw one about a year ago. Recommended some medication changes, but—" Marcus hesitated. "Insurance didn't cover most of it. We're managing with the basics." Dr. Chen set the chart down carefully. "Mr. Thompson, Marcus, I'm not Jake's attending physician, so I can't make any official medical decisions, but I'd like to suggest something. There's a pulmonologist here, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, who's brilliant with pediatric asthma cases. I trained with her in Boston. She might be able to find solutions that are more affordable or help you navigate the insurance maze better. I appreciate that, but specialists are expensive, even with insurance. My coverage is pretty basic, and with missing work—" Marcus gestured helplessly at their surroundings. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, measured. "What if I told you there might be a way to make it work? The hospital has programs, grants for families who need help. I could make sure you get connected with our financial counselors, the ones who actually know how to cut through the red tape." Pride warred with practicality in Marcus's chest. He'd always worked for what he had, never asked for handouts. But looking at Jake's small form in that hospital bed, pride seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford. "Why would you do this?" Marcus asked. "You don't know us. Because you gave your lunch to a scared little girl when you probably needed it more than she did," Dr. Chen said simply. "Because that kind of compassion shouldn't be punished by a broken healthcare system, and because I can help, so I should." Before Marcus could respond, Jake stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Dad?" His voice was hoarse from the oxygen. "Right here, buddy." Marcus squeezed his hand gently. "How are you feeling?" "Tired. Thirsty." Jake's eyes found Dr. Chen. "Who's that?" "I'm Dr. Chen," James said, standing and approaching the bed with a warm smile. "I'm a friend of your dad's, and I hear you're a pretty tough kid." Jake managed a weak smile. "I try to be." "Being brave doesn't mean you're never scared," Dr. Chen said. "It means you keep going even when you are scared. That makes you one of the bravest people I know." As Dr. Chen poured Jake some water from the pitcher on the bedside table, Marcus watched the gentle care in his movements. This wasn't just a doctor doing his job. This was a father who understood what it meant to watch your child suffer. "I should let you both rest," Dr. Chen said, after Jake had taken a few sips and settled back against his pillows. He pulled out a business card and handed it to Marcus. "This is my direct office number. Call me tomorrow, and I'll get you connected with Dr. Okonkwo and the financial team. No pressure, no strings. Just one parent helping another." Marcus took the card, his throat tight. "Thank you, really." Dr. Chen paused at the door. "My wife wants to meet you, by the way. Sophie, too. When things settle down, maybe we could arrange something. Coffee, lunch, whatever works." "I'd like that," Marcus said, and he meant it. After Dr. Chen left, Jake tugged on Marcus's hand. "Dad, is that man going to help me breathe better?" "I think he's going to try, buddy. I think he's going to try." Ooh, as Jake drifted back to sleep, Marcus sat in the dim room, Dr. Chen's card in his hand, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping kind, but the solid, real kind. The kind built on human connection and unexpected kindness. Outside, Chicago's November wind rattled the windows, but inside, something warmer was taking root. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of Dr. Okonkwo's office at St. Michael's Hospital, turning the dust motes into tiny dancers suspended in the light. Marcus sat across from her desk, Jake beside him, while the pulmonologist reviewed the results of the comprehensive tests they'd run over the past 2 weeks. It was mid-December now, and the Chicago cold had settled in with serious intent. But for the first time in months, Marcus wasn't paralyzed by fear, every time Jake coughed or wheezed. "So, the good news," Dr. Okonkwo said, her Nigerian accent lending a musical quality to her words, "is that Jake's asthma is definitely manageable. The bad news is that we've been managing it incorrectly." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "The medication Jake's been on, it's not wrong exactly, but it's not optimal for his specific case." She pulled up images on her computer screen. These scans show that Jake has exercise-induced bronchospasm combined with environmental allergies. The standard albuterol inhaler treats symptoms, but we need to prevent the inflammation before it starts. She turned to Jake with a warm smile. "How would you feel about trying some new medications, young man? These ones might taste a bit funny, but they'll help you run around without feeling like you can't breathe." Jake's eyes lit up. "Really? I could play basketball with my friends?" "With proper management, absolutely. We'll need to monitor you closely at first. But yes." As Dr. Okonkwo outlined the treatment plan, Marcus listened with growing anxiety. These medications sounded expensive: biologics, specialized inhalers, regular monitoring. His basic insurance wouldn't come close to covering it. As if reading his mind, Dr. Okonkwo pulled out a folder. "Now, Mr. Thompson, I want to discuss the financial aspect. Thanks to Dr. Chen's referral, I've been working with our hospital's financial assistance program. Based on your income and situation, Jake qualifies for our pediatric respiratory care grant. This will cover most of the medication costs, and what it doesn't cover, we have manufacturer assistance programs for." Marcus stared at her, not quite believing what he was hearing. How much will I need to pay?" "For the first 6 months of treatment, probably around $200 total. After that, we'll reassess. But it shouldn't be much more. The grant renews annually." So $200. He'd been prepared to hear thousands. His eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall in front of Jake. "There's one condition," Dr. Okonkwo added. "Dr. Chen has requested that you allow him to occasionally check in on Jake's progress. Not in an official capacity. He's a thoracic surgeon, not a pediatric pulmonologist, but he seems to have taken a personal interest in Jake's case." "Of course," Marcus managed. I don't know how to explain it." "Like an angel," Jake piped up, then looked embarrassed. "Sorry, Dad, I know you don't like that kind of talk." Dr. Okonkwo laughed. "I think angel might be overstating it, but Dr. Chen is certainly one of the good ones. He fights hard for his patients, and apparently their families too." After the appointment, as Marcus and Jake walked through the hospital corridors toward the exit, Jake suddenly stopped. "Dad, look!" Down the hall, Sophie was running toward them, her pink backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Behind her, Dr. Chen and a woman in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse, moved at a more sedate pace. "Mr. Marcus! Jake!" Sophie crashed into them with the enthusiasm only a 6-year-old could muster. "Daddy said you might be here today." Dr. Chen caught up, slightly out of breath but smiling. "Sophie has the energy of 5 kids since her mother came home." He gestured to the woman in the wheelchair. "Marcus, Jake, I'd like you to meet my wife, Lisa." Lisa Chen was a striking woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, though Marcus could see the remnants of her ordeal, a healing scar at her temple, a certain fragility in how she held herself. "I've heard so much about you, Marcus. James told me what you did for Sophie." "It was nothing," Marcus said automatically. "It was everything," Lisa corrected gently. "I was unconscious. James was falling apart, and Sophie was terrified and hungry. You were a stranger, but you gave what you had. That's not nothing." Sophie grabbed Jake's hand. "Want to see the Christmas decorations? They have a huge tree by the cafeteria." Jake looked at Marcus, who nodded permission, and the 2 kids ran off together, their laughter echoing down the hallway. The nurse positioned Lisa's wheelchair so she could see them, and they all watched the children admire the hospital's holiday display. "Dr. Okonkwo called me after your appointment," Dr. Chen said quietly. "I'm glad we could help get Jake the treatment he needs." Marcus turned to face him fully. "Why?" I still don't understand why you've done all this for us." Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, his eyes on his daughter. 3 years ago, when Sophie was born premature, we spent weeks in the NICU. I was a resident then, working insane hours, and Lisa was recovering from an emergency C-section. One night, I was in the hospital cafeteria at 3 a.m. completely lost. And this janitor, Roberto his name was, he saw me crying. He didn't know I was a doctor. He just saw a man falling apart. Dr. Chen's voice grew thick. Roberto bought me a coffee with his own money, sat with me for 20 minutes, and told me about when his son was in the NICU 20 years before. He said, "The hard times show you who you want to be." I never forgot that. He looked at Marcus directly. "When I saw you give Sophie your lunch, probably your only meal that day, I saw someone who'd already decided who they wanted to be. Someone who chose compassion over comfort. That person deserves support, not barriers." Lisa reached out and took Marcus's hand. "What James is trying to say is that you reminded us of why we do what we do. Medicine can make you cynical, but people like you restore faith." "I'm just a guy trying to raise his kid right," Marcus said, overwhelmed. "That's exactly it," Dr. Chen said. "You're doing it against all odds, with grace and generosity. That's heroic, Marcus." Sophie and Jake returned, both talking excitedly about the decorations, the lights, the giant candy canes. Sophie tugged on her father's coat. "Daddy, can we invite Mr. Marcus and Jake to Christmas dinner? Please?" Dr. Chen laughed. "Sophie, that's actually a great idea, but we should ask them properly." He turned to Marcus. "We usually host a small Christmas Eve dinner, just family and close friends. We'd love for you and Jake to join us, if you're not already committed." Marcus felt the familiar rise of pride, the instinct to decline, to maintain boundaries. But Jake was looking at him with such hope, and Sophie was bouncing on her toes, and Dr. Chen and Lisa both looked so genuinely warm in their invitation. "We'd love to," Marcus heard himself say, and Jake's whoop of joy told him he'd made the right choice. As they exchanged contact information and made plans, Marcus realized that the crushing weight he'd carried for so long, the weight of doing everything alone, of being solely responsible, of having no safety net, had lightened. Not disappeared, but lightened. Dr. Chen walked them to the hospital entrance. The December sun was already setting, painting the Chicago skyline in shades of orange and pink. Traffic hummed in the distance, and people hurried past with shopping bags and briefcases, everyone absorbed in their own worlds. "Marcus," Dr. Chen said as they stood in the cold air, "I want you to know this isn't charity, this is community. You gave when you had nothing to give. Now we're just returning the favor. That's how it's supposed to work." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "And one more thing," Dr. Chen added. "That construction company you work for, they're treating you badly. My brother-in-law runs a commercial construction firm. They're always looking for experienced workers, and they offer better benefits. I could make an introduction if you're interested." Marcus stopped, then laughed. A real, genuine laugh. "You've already done so much. So let me do a little more. What are friends for? Friends." The word settled over Marcus like a warm coat. When had he last had real friends? Not just work acquaintances or people he nodded to at Jake's school, but genuine friends who cared about his well-being. "Okay," Marcus said. "Yeah, I'd appreciate that introduction." They shook hands, and as Marcus and Jake walked to their truck in the parking garage, Jake slipped his hand into Marcus's. "Dad, this has been a really good day." "Yeah, buddy, it really has." "Do you think things are going to be better now?" Marcus thought about the new treatment plan, the financial assistance, the job lead, the dinner invitation. He thought about Sophie's laughter and Lisa's kindness, and Dr. Chen's steady friendship. But most of all, he thought about that moment in the waiting room 6 weeks ago, when he'd made the simple choice to give his lunch to a hungry child. "I think," Marcus said carefully, "that things are already better, and they'll keep getting better one day at a time." They drove home through Chicago's December evening, the city lights twinkling against the darkening sky. In the rearview mirror, Marcus could see St. Michael's Hospital receding into the distance, its windows glowing warm against the cold. He'd walked into that hospital twice now, alone and afraid, carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. But he wouldn't walk in alone again. He had friends now, a community, people who saw him not as a charity case, but as someone worth knowing, worth helping, worth being in their lives. All because he'd given a sandwich to a hungry little girl. As they pulled into their apartment complex, Jake was already talking about Christmas Eve, about what they should bring, about playing with Sophie. Marcus listened, his heart full, thinking about how the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward in ways you could never predict. Roberto the janitor had bought Dr. Chen a coffee. Dr. Chen had become a surgeon who saw patients as people. Marcus had shared his lunch. And now, two families who'd been strangers were becoming friends. Maybe that was the secret all along, that salvation didn't come from grand gestures or sweeping changes, but from the quiet, persistent choice to show up for each other, one small act at a time. As they walked up the stairs to their apartment, snow began to fall, the first real snow of the season, soft and gentle, covering Chicago in a blanket of white. Jake caught snowflakes on his tongue, and Marcus watched him, this beautiful boy who was breathing easier now, who had hope for basketball and running, and all the normal things kids should do. "Hey, Dad," Jake said as Marcus unlocked their door. "Yeah? I think we're pretty lucky." Marcus looked at his son, really looked at him, at the color returning to his cheeks, at the light in his eyes, at the future stretching out before him that looked a little brighter than it had before. "Yeah, Jake, I think we are." They went inside together, into their small but warm apartment, with Christmas coming and new medications starting, and a dinner invitation waiting, and a job lead that might change everything. The weight on Marcus's shoulders wasn't gone. Life was still hard, money still tight, challenges still ahead. But he wasn't carrying it alone anymore. And that, Marcus thought as he helped Jake with his homework while snow fell softly outside their window, that made all the difference.